Strategic Affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome in the new year to this new episode, the first episode of The Gist on StratNews Global. A warm welcome to all our viewers, no matter where you are and what time you're joining this live stream. And a welcome to those viewers who will pick up this stream later on our YouTube channel. Our expert tonight is Ambassador Amar Sinha. He's a former member of the National Security Advisory Board. He's also been India's envoy to Afghanistan. Evening, Ambassador. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Maybe not for the topic that we're discussing, but thanks for giving us time.
Good evening. Good evening. Happy to be here. A very happy New Year to you and all your viewers. I don't know whether we can say the same thing about Afghanistan because there's nothing happy nor anything new as far as Afghans are concerned.
Sure. Just wanted to pick up a few strands of events that have been happening in Afghanistan. There are many of them. But we've just chosen to see what's been happening along the Durand line. And there have been statements, there have been clashes, there's been firing across the Durand line as well. Of late, specifically, spokesperson of the Defense Ministry talking about the Durand line and how Pakistan is trying to divide the Pashtuns. How do you see these statements and events taking place between the Taliban and Pakistan in terms of a divide? Does it show that they can really be independent of GHQ and Rawalpindi, or is this a smoke screen of sorts, a good cop, bad cop kind of thing?
Well, you see, statements from different quarters could be a smoke screen, but what you are seeing in terms of the videos that have come out of the soldiers actually going and breaking down the fence, rolling up the wire, and the now official statements coming out of Defense Ministry, etc., indicates that how important and emotive this issue of Durand line is for Afghans, no matter where they are. So obviously this is a dilemma for Pakistan. They really wanted not only the fence fenced, but they really wanted some sort of a global recognition of the Durand line, which has always been contested by the Afghans. It is clear that even the Taliban 2, the Emirate 2 version, is not willing to accept that, and definitely not so early in the regime. And so I guess Pakistan is trying to, as I said, have the apple from the center rather than from the edges. And that's not going to happen for various reasons, both historical, emotive, and purely practical reason of who is running Kabul. If you look at the Haqqanis, which are controlling, it is the Haqqanis which straddle the Durand line. And they are not going to cut up their own empire just to retain presence in Kabul. So that is a dilemma that Pakistan has, that it has a government of its choice, but a government which is deeply interested in the Durand line and it's, which doesn't recognize it. And of course, they're saying that we are one nation. How can you divide? It's a very interesting statement and development.
We could dwell on a little bit more on one of those comments and questions that I just taken about the Kandahari group and the Haqqani group in the Taliban, but more on what's been happening along the Durand line in terms of, as you're saying, this is a long-standing issue. No Afghan has ever recognized the Durand line as government or the Taliban, even in the previous regime, as the international border. But is Pakistan not being able to deliver world recognition to the Taliban government currently a factor, or is it a larger issue?
Well, no, I don't think it's connected with the issue of recognition, but that will come on the basis of the merits of the Taliban government, whether they can show any signs of change or even observe part of the Doha agreement or some of the commitments they had given. So I think that consideration is very different. I don't think Taliban government is doing this or taking this position only as a negotiating posture, because it's the roots run much deeper than just this negotiation. And no government really can sort of barter this away in any negotiation. At best, they can have a borderless frontier, but to have Durand line as a recognized frontier with barbed wire fencing, obviously it's difficult. And obviously Pakistan military will realize that it's also difficult to enforce this sort of thing through just their might.
So, how do you see things developing? I mean, we've seen Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi reacting to developments at a press conference and saying that this will be sorted out. There, I forget the exact word he used, but something of sort of unscrupulous elements who are fomenting trouble. How do you see this playing out from both sides?
Well, he had said that it will be sorted out diplomatically. I don't know what that means, whether Taliban believes in diplomacy or till now the track record says that no. So I don't know whether diplomacy with Pakistan will work or they would be ready to engage with this. But Mr. Qureshi has to understand that diplomacy also has its own limitations. And I think the regime change in Kabul perhaps is the clearest example of failure of diplomacy, because eventually the world ended up with a regime that would have come in any case if there was no diplomacy and it was a bad war which was lost. So I don't know. Maybe they have to just put this on the back burner for the time being. It cannot be sorted out immediately. It's something which has festered for over 100 years. And it cannot go away in just 3 or 4 months, just because a regime which is well disposed towards Pakistan, or perhaps even a creation of Pakistan, is there in Kabul. I think that would delegitimize any government in Kabul very, very quickly.
Ambassador Nikhil Paranjpe has a question. Even if there's a divide, he asks, can the Taliban or any form of government in Afghanistan actually manage to hold up without the support from Pakistan? He feels it may have some play, but they can't move much.
Hold up in a sense that can a government exist?
I presume
the
so.
Governments did exist with support of others, but of course they were always a troubled regime. The last 20 years, the regime of President Karzai and President Ghani was troubled basically because Pakistan was not playing ball with them. But I don't think that's an issue in terms of its existence. But of course, like good neighbors, both countries will have to come to some understanding on good neighborly relationship, and that street has to be both ways. So I don't think that Pakistan can continue with its old ways and expect that it will be the Afghanistan which will be in compliance with every request that they have.
124 Just Madness has another comment and question, Ambassador. And you talked about the Haqqani group. He or she is saying, given the Haqqani network controls the interior ministry, can Afghanistan act independently away from Pakistan's influence? Also, how is the Afghan economy operating considering the West has closed off its funding, IMF, World Bank, etc.?
Well, let me take the question of the economy. First, to call it a government itself is a misnomer. It's not a government. It's an entity. It's a ruling entity which has captured power through force. I think we should be very clear about it. The economy, whatever there was, which was, of course, highly dependent on assistance. In fact, I think 70 or 80% of the budget depended on foreign aid. It has completely collapsed. The insecurity, and to which Taliban itself contributed in the last 20 years, that they did not create or allow the governments to create a condition which could really jumpstart the economy. So that is a problem that even the existing capital, the businessmen, the people who had wealth have fled Kabul. So there has been a huge drain. So I don't know what to expect in terms of the revival of the economy. Unless normal activities happen, I don't think economy will sort of restart in any meaningful way. No, the Afghani currency will be very weak. Of course, there would be a lot of trade happening, but that I think will go more into personal pockets of people who are importing stuff to meet the normal demands or daily demands of the people. But economy in terms of investments, employment generation, industry, those things we should not forget. And let's not forget that, Afghanistan, I think, would be facing a huge energy crisis on top of everything else, because their entire energy requirement is met from imports. Now, how long the Central Asian countries will be able to provide that electricity without payment, it is anybody's guess. I don't know how they will manage, and of course the impact of all this is on Afghan people. Bad weather, inclement weather actually right now, absolutely zero income, collapse of the economy, and very little hope of that it can be regenerated.
Farzan Khyber says that I'm from the Khyber agency. We Pashtun support Afghanistan. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is not Pakistan. And linked to that, I just wanted to bring in a question from Omkar Datpe, who says, can the statements from the Taliban be a means of mobilizing Pashtuns on the other side of the border of the Durand line? But they are still very much dependent on Pakistan for their survival. We've seen the PTM as well. I'll go on to the TTP after this answer, Ambassador.
You see, what I don't think the Pashtuns on the other side would really want to rally against the Pakistani state because they're Pakistani citizens. We have to understand that. But that also does not mean that they recognize this Durand line as international border. And the statement about Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in fact, even in India, before independence, the description of India used to be that India extends from Cuttack to Attock. And Attock was, as you know, was the border where India ended. And of course, Pakistan came out of India. So it gained because of the British policies when they left, and the border remained undefined, and it has become a contentious issue. And that was the reason when Pakistan became independent, the only negative vote against Pakistan in joining the United Nations came from Afghanistan. This is a story which has sort of haunted them, and it's going to stay with them. In a way, Pakistan's strategic objective in terms of cooperating with the Americans in the withdrawal was that they would have some finality on Durand line, which obviously has not happened because of the very nature of the hasty withdrawal.
Now you have the Afghan Taliban on one side of the Durand line. We've seen an increase in attacks by the TTP after the ceasefire ended, a month-long ceasefire in Pakistan itself. How do you see those two developments?
See, while I don't think the Afghan government has the wherewithal to actually run an insurgency in Pakistan or actively do so, but similarly, they would not have the willingness or the ability to stop it because ultimately they all belong to the same stock. And that is why I have always held that, this expectation from Taliban regime in Kabul that they will start cooperating with the international community in terms of controlling the different terror groups is misplaced. Basically, because they have been their partners in the trenches for the last 20 years. They have used their men, they have shared the material, they have shared resources, the same ideology, TTP and others have pledged allegiance to Taliban. And that means a lot in the political Islam world. So I don't think they're going to break ranks. Whether they actively promote it or not doesn't matter, but it will provide an ecosystem where these things will operate, and it will continue to haunt Pakistan.
Continue to haunt. So in a sense, are there signs of blowback both from the Taliban, Afghan Taliban and the TTP for Pakistan's foreign policy, which is to support terror as a state policy?
Well, I don't know if you saw the videos, just after 15th of August, where that is one thing what the leadership says sitting in Kabul. But the rank and file of the Taliban leaders were actually mocking at the border, both at Kandahar and other places, the Pakistani soldiers across the border. And they were saying that now we are going to come and get you, and there will be a Taliban flag even in Islamabad. And I think Taliban flag was flown in Peshawar and Red Mosque. So that is something that Pakistan will have to contend with. It's like riding a tiger. You can't really get off so easily. And unfortunately, that is what we have to live with in this region.
Live with this in this region, India, and how we've been shut out post 15th August. I mean, there's no mention of whether we'll open our missions again, even with a limited number of staff, though reports suggesting some of the Taliban leaders have offered security. But we have seen incremental or ginger steps in at least being able to provide aid to Kabul, directly to the people who need it. I mean, whether it's the Kabul Indira Gandhi Hospital or through the WHO, vaccines. Of course, the wheat is still hanging fire because of Pakistan. How do you see those incremental measures that New Delhi has been able to take?
If I can answer your question in two parts, one is, of course, the part
Sure.
of the reopening, the engagement, etc. Uh, Amitabh, yes, of course. If we are concerned about the people of Afghanistan, I think we will have to engage in some measure. Now, that does not mean that we'll have to rush into recognizing the Taliban government. In terms of putting people on the ground, it is a difficult proposition, and obviously the lot of considerations will have to go into taking such a call. And it's not, I don't think it's going to happen very quickly. Even the countries which really favored the hastened exit of America and wanted Taliban back in any form, they also have refrained from recognizing. Second, in terms of Taliban assuring security for diplomatic presence or the diplomatic establishments of different countries. I find it a bit ironical because ultimately the source of insecurity and threat to us and to many others were from the Taliban and its affiliated groups and Haqqanis. And so I don't know what is the level of trust, whether you can trust them. And very interestingly, if you would have noticed that while they are saying that they would provide security, they have also entered into an agreement with the UN. And they're accepting $6 million to precisely provide security. So it's absolutely amazing that I'm both the chore and the thanedar, that in the sense that I'm the one who creates insecurity, but then I also want you to pay me to be your protector. Now, whether India would like to get into that sort of a situation. And second, what level of security can they provide? Uh, there is this new element of Islamic ISKP, Khorasan province. The head of the Badri unit, who was in charge of Kabul security, himself got killed in one of the hospitals in Kabul. So, if they could not assure security for themselves, I don't know how credible their assurances to others would be. And this obviously, what happened there is a reflection of the internal fissures within Taliban. So, so I would not be surprised if the rogue elements or the ones who have grievances within Taliban also continue these attacks against the foreign entities or foreign presence, basically to discredit the regime that is there. Second is in terms of aid. Well, it's a tragedy that the wheat has not yet started flowing. But good thing is that Pakistan has matched the offer that we made of 50,000 tons. And I think yesterday their first truck delivered. And Pakistan has been delaying it for very, very frivolous reasons, really. I guess, initially they objected to Afghan trucks coming to Wagah border, which is part of the SAFTA agreement. And even normal trade that used to happen before Taliban took over, the Afghans used to come. Second, Pakistan, while to the rest of the world, it is saying that please come and help Afghanistan, there's a humanitarian crisis. But this simple business opportunity where some money would start flowing into Afghan economy through the transportation logistics business, there also they have an objection. So I think they're talking with sort of folk tongues, and people will have to understand this. But they cannot delay it. They cannot stop it. You know, even in the past, we have shipped wheat to Afghanistan. Obviously, we are giving them a good chance, and hopefully they'll come around. Otherwise, there are other ways of getting it through Chabahar, through Iran, or organizing it from Central Asia to be delivered to Afghanistan. So, I guess we would be looking at all these options, and not really. The aid should not be vetoed, or Pakistan should not have a veto on our aid and assistance flow, which is meant for the Afghan people. And I'm happy at least the medicine and Covaxin or the drugs for COVID, the injections were delivered, but that is something which can be taken by air.
Sure. I'll just come back to India to take some questions from viewers. You did answer this, or you did talk about it earlier. Shubham Sharma, who says, how do you see the recent clashes between the TTP and the Taliban in Pakistan? Can we expect more heat in the Afbak region in the near future?
Yes, if these are any signs of how things will evolve, I guess there would be. You'll see much more heat. Only, I would say, from our perspective, the only good thing is at least we'll not be blamed, because in the past, Pakistanis used to sort of try to externalize this entire problem of how they have been treating their own Pashtun populations in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area as stepchildren of the state of Pakistan, and their grievances. And they have, of course, encouraged a certain radicalization in the society and radical organizations. So it will come back to bite them.
Another question from Kartike Singh. What's the future of the NRF in Afghanistan? Is it getting any global support?
Well, let's say that I have not seen signs of any global active support. But in terms of sympathy for the leaders of the National Resistance Front, whether it will be called National Resistance Front or it will take some other name, I'm not sure. But the fact that the very sizable Afghan diaspora, which left after 15th of August and is sort of stationed today in many parts of the world, including some of the neighboring countries, uh, they are there are signs that they're at least meeting, they're looking at different options, and they're trying to see whether uh, how quickly Taliban can consolidate its power base within Afghanistan. Now that is not happening for simple reason, because all the energy has been spent by the Taliban government on first dealing with the humanitarian crisis, at least in sort of sending out appeals to rest of the world, and maintaining internal unity, because that is perhaps the starting point for them to tell the world that we are a credible government, and please come and help us, recognize us, and help us also become a government. So they have been focused there. But in terms of uh, other offerings for the people, I don't see anything. So I think after this, when once spring comes, I think picture would be clearer. There's a lot of sympathy, as I said, and this sympathy can eventually turn into active support, provided, and I add this proviso, provided there are signs of resistance building up on the ground in Afghanistan, because you can't run a resistance from outside the country. No, there have to be a lot of grievance, and that grievance is accumulating basically because of the atrocities that they are committing, the revenge killings, the hangings. The reports that you're seeing are really tip of the iceberg. What is happening in the provinces is absolutely astounding, according to some of the ground reports that we get.
Just to go back to India, you talked about aid, how Pakistan was holding up, of course, wheat. But in terms of the mid and the long term, what are India's options and what should we be doing? And just to take a comment from Swarup the Best, who says India is not punching rightly. We only talk, we don't do anything to exploit fault lines. I presume he means in Pakistan.
Uh, Well, we don't have to use Afghanistan if we really want to exploit the fault lines. The fault lines are there. Those contradictions come up to the fore on their own. I don't think it need. We don't really have to follow the policies that Pakistan has followed, sort of 100%. But yes, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I think in the medium and long term, I think immediate focus should be on the humanitarian assistance. It is no, next 3 months will be absolutely critical because of the weather conditions, which are very, very harsh in Afghanistan. The fact is that people don't have food. Food aid has to reach, medicine has to reach. Many countries have focused on education, but of course, winter is a lull or a slow period for education. But that demand will start picking up from February or March. Uh, but in the long term, what my own personal view is that while we should definitely have pro Afghan or pro people policies, but we should not accept the Taliban or this sort of a radical regime as a natural template for Afghanistan. Uh, so we should work on two sort of planes. First, to how to moderate the government or the outlook, if that is possible at all. My own view is it will be very, very tough, and make an inclusive government. Otherwise, we should actively work to make sure that this government is as short-lived as possible, and that it remains an aberration in the Afghan history.
How do you do that?
Well, exactly the question that you said, that the NRF, because ultimately the Afghans will have to rise up, and then I think the equations will change in the region. And there has been there is a history. I don't have to go over it again, but there are ways, and I don't think this government is either financially or economically in a way to carry on ruling 33 million people just out of due to fear that they have of Taliban. And this ultimately the fear also wears off.
Ambassador Sinha, absolute pleasure again talking to you. This time in the new year, we've kicked off our show, The Gist, with you. And just going to take a comment from Matara, who says, great look for the new year. It's always a pleasure to listen to Ambassador Sinha's insightful views on Afghanistan. So thank you from our viewers, from StratNews, and from me personally, Ambassador Sinha.
Well, thank you. And I hope as the year goes on, we have some more better stories from
Better
Afghanistan to discuss. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ambassador.
Thank you.
To all our viewers, thanks for joining this show. Do send us your feedback on how you look, how you like this new look, and your comments are most welcome. In fact, they are extremely helpful on YouTube, because apparently the YouTube logarithms look at interaction with viewers. So whether it's through live interaction or your comments that you put up, if you don't subscribe to our YouTube channel, do that. And if you already do spread the word. I'm just going to put out a link, which is also there in a YouTube descriptor, if you are in the mood to help support us financially as well. So thanks to everybody. You've been watching The Gist on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.